bird's eye view of Lake Tahoe, courtesy of who's become our drone guy here on this vlog, Mr. Chris Brunsvold, as we kick things off on vlog 176. If you've never been to the Nevada side of Lake Tahoe in the summer, by the way, it's definitely worth the trip. I'm coming your way a little sad this week, given the fact that my favorite TV show of all time, Better Call Saul, has come to an end. I have a few things I have to say about that, if you feel like sticking around until the end of this particular episode. But for now, we're going to head over to the Peppermill and check out a 0-10-20 game. I show up at the casino on a rainy afternoon to find that today, it's just called the Pep. The day started off good, as my son got a gift from a local poker player named Jay. And before I could get in the $10 game, which was already going on, I buy in to the $5 version. And right out of the gate, I get dealt an extremely playable hand. My $20 raise results in 3 callers. And with 80 in, the flop comes 6-3-4 with 2 hearts. Big blind checks. I bet 50. The hijack calls, and the button calls, with the big blind going out. With 230 in, the turn is a good card for me. It's another 4. I bet 110, which is just under half the pot. The hijack has 210 left and decides to bet it all, forcing the button out, and obviously, I complete here. So with 650 in, the river doesn't change anything, and I win against pocket eights. As he said, he put me on ace-king. We get a $10 under-the-gun straddle and 2 guys call. I have jack 10 of diamonds in the cutoff and make it 65. The button thinks for a long time and folds, but the straddle isn't going anywhere. So with 150 in, we're heads up to king 10 deuce, 1 diamond, and he checks. I decide to bet exactly half the pot here, figuring to be good a decent amount of the time with decent equity if I'm not. He doesn't even think for more than 5 seconds and makes the call. So with 300 in, the turn is another deuce. He checks, and given how decisive he was on that flop, I figured it was a good time to slow down and hope to improve on the river, which I do. It comes another 10. Obviously, I was hoping that he'd bet, and I figured if he had ace-king or king-queen, that he would. Instead, he checks. So, with that in mind, I decided to bet a little less than half the pot to increase my chances of getting paid off, which does indeed happen. Giving us a $550 pot, I show my hand, and he did end up having king-queen of hearts. I then pick up queen 10 of hearts and make it 25 over a limp. That came by the same player, and we're heads up again. With 55 in, it comes 6-6-7, 1 heart, and he checks. The good news is that he'll miss the flop the majority of the time. The bad news is that if he has anything at all here, he's probably not going to fold. I bet 30, and sure enough, he doesn't fold. With 115 in, the turn is the king of hearts, giving me a flush draw. Now he checks, and given the fact that I can easily represent ace-king here, I decide to bet out for $75 with my flush draw. He only thinks about it for about a second before check raising to 200. Can I just stop for a minute and point out that I seem to get check raised in this situation a lot. Anyway, I think it's a clear-cut fold. Chances are I'm either going to miss, I'm going to hit and not get paid off, granted that's less likely, or I'm going to hit and be up against a boat, which, given his please call me sizing here, I think is a pretty legitimate concern that he already had a full house and I was drawing dead. I'll never know as I got out of the way. I pick up aces again, and my raise gets called from an older gentleman who was very tough to get money out of. He does end up calling my bet on a queen-high flop, but gets away from his hand on the turn when I bet $100. So I had a good image in this game for sure. So much so that my 3-bet with ace-king didn't get any action. And if that wasn't enough, I picked up queens, and despite a king-high board, I still got 2 streets worth of value and was up about $700 early on in the day. This is a rainy mid-session update on a Thursday afternoon. I am moving out of the $5 game and we are starting the $10 game. this is the end of the mid-session update. So it was about 3 p.m. when I finally got into a 0-10-20 game with this little gold pot indicating who was in the winner's straddle. The first hand I'd win would come against one of the pros in the game, and he would open to 75 in early position, and I 3-bet ace jack of hearts to 225, and he opted not to continue. After that, things would turn though. I would lose about 5 small pots, and in 10-20, they're not actually all that small. It resulted in me losing almost $100 on most of those, so what had been a really good day no longer qualified as such, and over the next several hours, I couldn't even come close to getting dealt any playable hands. But after a few hours in that game, I did get the call to switch to the main game, and I had to hope things would improve for me there. The game wasn't much better than the other game, but it was a slight upgrade. First hand comes when 4 people limp in, and I'm in the big blind with ace, deuce of clubs, and I complete. The straddle checks, and with 100 in, it comes ace, 5, deuce, giving me top and bottom. I bet out for $80 here. On my right is local legend Ms. T. She's in the under the gun +1 position, and she raises me to 250. Folds back around to me, and I'm obviously not folding here. The question is, should I raise, playing 2,000 effective? Seemed like there would be a chance that she might throw away a hand like ace-jack if I did, though Crush Live Poker always has long preached the truth of the aggressive action theorem, is what Bart Hansen calls it, and that states that when a player raises a bet post-flop, they're never folding. Now, obviously, that's not always true, but in my experience over the years, it's true more often than it's not. So it was definitely a spot where I could have re-raised, but ultimately my plan was to just call and hope to get a safe turn card before getting serious money into this pot. And with 600 in, the turn is a queen. I check, and she immediately says that she's all in for about 1,700 that I have left, as she has me covered. This, to me, was not a very difficult spot. There are a lot of players that Ms. T has obliterated in big pots over the years, and that's almost never been me. I feel like I've always had a really good read on her for the time she has a really big hand and the time she doesn't, and this, to me, was one in which she did. So I decided to fold my aces and deuces, and she shows ace-queen for a turned 3-outer. So she takes that one down, and the money I lost, plus $1,000 or so more, went to an OMC on her left, in kind of a coolerish situation a minute later. Pretty much the last guy in the room I was hoping would get it, but that's neither here nor there. Then I'd play a hand against him minutes later. I had queen 6 of clubs in the straddle, and ended up going runner flush on a paired board. He bet the river for 50, and I made it 125. He then decides to 3-bet the river to 325, and I snap folded on what is going to be a full house 100% of the time, you can guarantee. I obviously didn't get a look, but I'm as confident in that fold as any fold I've ever made in my entire life. But it was frustrating that I happened to go runner at that time, and not the times where it's actually what I want to have happen. So I'm not exactly running great in the big game, to say the least. That often seems to happen, by the way, when you start in a smaller game and go to a bigger game. It's just kind of seems like you tend to make all your big hands in the smaller version. But anyway, back to that guy I just mentioned. He was running like absolute God. I mean, he just could not miss. It was amazing, and was probably up $3,000 at least on the day. But sometimes you can take advantage of guys like that when they want to lock up their win. I hadn't played a hand in a while and figured it was about time that I tried to get a bluff through. And when you're going to run a random bluff in Reno, well, what the hell? You might as well do it with the skinny. I made it 65 and ultimately got 3 callers. Needless to say, if I was going to try to run a bluff, not exactly the situation I wanted to find myself in. And with 260 in, I don't flop anything. Not really a shock with deuce 3 off, I suppose, but either way, I decided not to c-bet bluff here. But no one else decides to bet either, which I figured would leave the door open for a delayed c-bet. The turn is a 10, and I decide to make said delayed c-bet, putting in $100. And sure enough, my only caller is this gentleman who has been on a massive heater. So with 450 in, the river is a 5. I decide to go for a sizing of 250 here, hoping to get him off of week 10. He thinks about it for only about a minute and tosses his cards into the muck. I show the bluff, as you're contractually obligated to do when you decide to run one with Deuce 3 in Reno, Nevada, and he loudly complains that if he had a pair, he would have called me.
Hello, Skinny. Damn, you stuck up on me.
Anyway, some more big pots are being played, and I found myself really hoping to get involved with one. And sure enough, I wouldn't have to wait long to do it. I pick up kings under the gun and make it 60 over a hijack straddle. Ms. T calls an MP1 in the hijack defense. With 190 in, I flop top set on a 2-diamond board. I decide to bet out for 80 here. Ms. T snap folds, but the hijack isn't going anywhere. And with 350 in, the turn is another jack, giving me kings full. I decide to try and do what could likely be interpreted as extreme weakness in this spot, and just bet $80 again. He thinks about it for only a minute before raising to 200. Now, based on a number of things I know about this particular opponent, I believe the play is to smooth call here and check to him on the river and allow for the second barrel. So, I just call, and with 750 in, the river brings in the diamond, and I stick to the plan and check. He thinks about it for only a second and announces 300. I didn't figure my sizing would matter at all in this particular spot, given the fact that I was putting him on a bluff, but obviously I'm still going to make the raise. And I end up putting $750 into the pot, and he doesn't think about it for more than a couple of seconds and mucks his hand, something he would not have done if he had had a flush, that's for sure. So we win that one, which made up for a rough start in the $10 game. End up playing for about 2.5 more hours, actually. Unfortunately, those 2.5 hours didn't contain any hands worth showing before racking up, booking the win. Yes. Well, if you've been with us since, I believe, the very first vlog I've ever done, you know that I love time-lapse video whenever I get a chance to shoot it. And apparently my cat, Oliver, loves photobombing it, as you can see as we come back here and wrap up this vlog. Didn't have a chance to record the outro video outside the Peppermill like I normally do. And as far as this past session, get ready for a really exciting number right here. After I was really looking good to start the session, made a bunch of big hands that you saw when I was in that $5 blind game. Things turned for me pretty quick when I got into the $10 game. Managed to save quite a bit of money in that hand against Ms. T when she turned the 3-outer. Because I don't think if I were to raise there that she would have wanted any part of folding, but who knows exactly how that would have played out. But ultimately, after an up and down day, I came out, and again, this is exciting stuff, $245 ahead. So it beats losing any day of the week. But I just got to talk for 1 second. You know, those of you who have been with me for a long time may appreciate this. I started the vlog in 2018 when I was still a morning news reporter, obviously a married man and not a parent at that point. And at that point, I believe that was already the year where season 3 of my favorite television show ever, Better Call Saul, aired. And I mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it again. And because now it's even got a little bit new layer to it with me. When the show started, it was in 2015. And it was in the only 3-month stretch of my life that I can really recall since I've been an adult where I didn't have a job at all. I had been laid off from my radio job. I used to be a sports talk radio host on an ESPN affiliate here in Reno. And I was looking into getting into TV jobs, but it took a couple months to get hired. And that was during the time where the show debuted. I distinctly remember sitting home by myself on a Monday afternoon at like 2 p.m. watching the first episode of Better Call Saul. And it's just amazing. At that point, I was not yet married. I would get married later on that year. And now, when you fast forward to the very end of the show, it comes when I'm obviously divorced. I'm not sad about that. A proud parent to a fantastic son, Austin, who's now going on 3 years old. And I just found it to be kind of a fun twist to this, that on the day or the last episode of this show aired, my son had his first day of preschool. So just think about that for a minute. Obviously, COVID extended the lifespan of the show longer than it otherwise would have gone, but still, it's amazing how my life changed just during the course of time in which the show was airing. And I won't get too deep into it, but I just have to say, for those of you that have watched, and out of all the people in the world of poker, I am the president of the Better Call Saul fan club, with Jeff Boski being my VP. I absolutely thought the ending was phenomenal. I could not have imagined how they could have done it better. It was just so good. So I won't really get into it for those of you who haven't seen it, but man, I was very happy with it. And I'm going to be very sad now that show is no longer a part of my life. Anyway, hey, if you want to consider getting some practice, we talking about practice, man. It's not the game. It's not the game that I go out there and play every day like it's my last. Hey, consider checking out on Poker Bros. Good place to get that practice. The High Society Club is the one I am an agent for. Click the link in the description below and use my referral code. Follow me on Instagram at Ben Deach and hit the like and subscribe buttons here on YouTube so you can be alerted when new videos come out. See you back here next time.